Welcome back, everyone. I know it was fairly quick for some of you. I'm just going to cover just the card portions for this. You have 6 cards, which you basically pull out by using draw. So you use draw, you will get a card. Now we got the bowl card. I already used a card earlier to simulate, to get an effect going. So we're just going to store this card. Now, by storing the card, I have the bowl effect on standby. Now, I used a card earlier and I got TP card, which is the Spire, and I use a Royal Road to stash it. Balance will give a increased target damage by 10%. The Bowl card reduces target's damage taken by 10%. The Arrow increases target attack speed by 10%. And then the Spear reduces the target's ability recast time by 20%. This makes you hit faster by 10%. I don't know if this actually makes you hit faster. I'm gonna have to test it out actually. But if you're doing instant spells, or at least if your recast is longer than what your cast time is, then you would be able to, it just does the recast. We'll do a quick test on it on a target dummy right after. The Ewer actually got a good boost. Now it refreshes MP, so it's almost like an MP song. So this is good to save on yourself, especially if you're leveling. I noticed I was running out of MP because I had to spam basically Cure 2 to keep tanks up. Sometimes I found it was not hard, but found it a bit of a challenge to carry tanks that weren't using cooldowns. The Spire also got a buff and will refresh target's TP, so it's almost like a pay-on. Now, one thing to note, Ewer card. You used to be able to use the Ewer on a Dark Knight even if he had his Dark Side. So if Dark Knight used to have Dark Side on, you'd be able to use it because it would reduce the amount of MP. It would reduce the MP cost of his spells. So now it basically gives a mana refresh. So you can't use it on a Dark Knight that is using Dark Side. If you use it on him, it's just going to use it on yourself. So you won't lose the card, but you'll be giving it to yourself instead. Now we're going to cover a bit of kind of when to use or on who to use these cards, because that's the most important part of the Astrologian. And if you want to maximize your class, you have to understand the other class. So you have to know when and on who to use those cards. Now, one recommendation I have if you're doing a lot of pugs, in my opinion, Astrologian requires communication and understanding your party mechanic. Now, if you were to get a balance card and you're in a pug, I would highly suggest to be running a parser. And the main reason for that is you want to maximize your card. So if you're going to be using the balance card, which will boost their damage by 10%, so if I was using balance, I want to use it on the top DPS character because I want 10%. I don't want to use it on a character that's doing, let's say, 100 DPS because now he's going to be doing 110. If I can use it on a character that's doing, like, say, 200-300, then it's just that much more per second. So this is one thing you have to pay attention to and understand classes, because if you do it on, let's say you notice in your party somebody has Raging Strikes up, and you have this card you were looking to use it, then use it on somebody that has Raging Strikes because it'll actually, be more effective for that period of time. And then the same with Bowl. Generally you'll be using that on a tank, or if you know there's a big mechanic coming. But as far as rating goes, I don't know if you'll be able to plan out your rotations around this because you want to be pumping out cards to keep DPS going. So I don't know if you'll be able to just hold on to a Bowl card for the entire party for that reason. You might get lucky and it might work out for you, but I don't know if you'll be able to all the time. The Arrow. Now I'm pretty sure if you were to need like a lot of healing, you could use this on a healer, but I don't think that there's really such a time that's going to be handy. If you get the Bowl card, use it on your tank. I'd say right away, because you shouldn't rely on, unless there's like, I shouldn't say that, sorry. Use it on your tank at some good moments, because I know like A1 is kind of hard hitting right now for healers. So if you know Plasma's coming and one of your tanks has a hard time, I'm not sure how all tanks deal with Plasma in A1. I know as a warrior I don't have an issue at all, but that's just how we do things, and we cover that more probably next week because we're really hoping for the clear next week. If you're doing it on a Dark Knight, I would recommend on a Dark Knight. I think they have less cooldowns than Warriors and Paladins. So this is probably only going to be for your tanks, unless some scenarios where AoE damage is coming and you have the AoE Bowl. Bowl is probably the card that I use the most to use Royal Road on. Alright, let's pull a card and see. Bowl. Alright, well, I'm going to shuffle. Alright, Spire. So, I'll store it for now. Arrow. When I would use Arrow. Attack speed. Technically, to maximize DPS, you always want to use it on like your slowest targets. Because let's say you're doing it on Ninja. You're going to boost his speed by 10%. But I think Ninja's already hit for about like every 2 seconds. So you're just shaving off 0.2 for his attacks. Now he'll be attacking very fast. So depending on how skilled they are, they may actually miss. And I'm going to say probably the same with Monk. So I would save these for like a Dragoon. Save it for a Warrior even, if your Warrior's in DPS stance. That would actually greatly help them, especially in an opener. I would recommend using this on a Warrior that knows how to do the 3 Fell Cleave opener, because this will guarantee he hits his 3 Fell Cleaves. But generally, if you want to maximize somebody's attack speed for DPS purposes, use it on somebody that is a slower. I'm not saying using a Ninja is going to be a bad idea, but it's, again, if you're in a pug, use your parse and check out how that pans out for them. You can also use it on healers, but that's going to be your cast time, if anything. The Spear, that reduces the target's ability's recast time by 20%, because at the bottom you see cast and recast. Instant. So basically if you have a class that casts a lot of instants, you can actually make your heals go out faster because your cast is 2 seconds, but your recast is 2.5. So there's that 0.5 seconds where you're not doing anything. So you can use it on an Astrologian, probably a White Mage, same scenario. And then you'll be able to just push out more heals or more spells. But this is going to be good for any melee class because they don't have cast times. So it's all instants, and then there's a recast. So it's going to shave down their global cooldowns by 20%. So that's definitely a plus for any melee class. Or even maybe Bard, but with Wanderer's Minuet, I'm not quite sure how that works out. Now, the Astrologian is really good because if you don't have a Bard, he can basically be your healer and your Bard at the same time, which is what I really like about this class. It's the class I wanted. I wanted a healing support class, and this is what the Astrologian is. The only complaint I still have is they don't give us a HUD where you can see your party members TP. So I can tell you right now, unless your warrior is calling for it, don't use it on a warrior. Warriors now have the ability to regen some TP, and with having that deliverance stance, which basically makes it so they don't run out of TP, unless they're overpowering like crazy, I would save it for a Paladin. I'm not sure how Dark Knight fares out in long fights, but Paladins tend to need TP in long fights, and almost every other class has a way to regenerate TP, unless you're pushing their attack speed quite a bit. So if you're using the Spear or the Arrow on people, then start saving the Spire for them. But alright, so I got the Arrow. So I'm going to use the Arrow, and it's boosted right now for potency. So it's going to give me more than 10%. So my spell speed went down, but so did my recast. So I can cast faster heals. 30, so that was 15% it was boosted by Royal Road. Now, let's have a quick look at the cards, because they did change in the patch. So, if you get Bowl and Balance, your next card is going to be 50% stronger. It says 150 potency, that's just what it means in the mathematical. That you're going to do a card that's going to be half stronger. So, this card is, like, if you're going to take in one of these cards, it's either that you don't need Bowl, or that you're not in combat and you just want to take it and store it in between fights. If you're in the middle of combat and you get Balance, don't store it. Because then the next card, if you get Balance again, then it's just going to be a 50% stronger Balance. So, in my opinion, Balance, you should use it or store it. I don't really know how to word this, but if you think about it, you have 30 seconds in between each card draw, and you have 15 seconds duration. So, if you pull a Balance card, So I'm not going to use Bowl. I don't feel like I'll need to right now, so I'll store it. And that would be what I do for Bowl. Now for Balance, if I got the Balance card, I would spread it. So what I'm trying to say is, if I pull a Balance card, which this might take some time, so I'm going to spread it for later, because I don't want to store it for a 50% chance of having something stronger. When, if you use 2 Balance cards in a row, let's say, then you're doing 20%, not 15%. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And the Bowl card, I don't really use that much unless I know the tanks are taking a beating. Then I would use the Bowl card. But generally, I store that card because I can then boost something for stronger. So let's say I got Bowl on the first one. Instead of spreading it, I would store it so that if I get the Balance card later, then it's a stronger, so it's just more DPS output. That's just the way I look at it. I got Spear, perfect, that's what I'm trying to cover. So if I take Spear, ability recast time, but then if I use Royal Road, the next card is going to be doubled in duration. So 30 seconds for the next card. So you don't really lose. If you were to get this card again, then you're still at the same level. But if you were to get a Balance card, then that's 30 seconds of 10%, which is really good because then you just doubled a card that's probably a bit better, especially if somebody's got cooldowns going or if you're doing an opener. A lot of this is planning, and you're going to be on the fly, so it's going to be hard to plan about all these things. So pull another card out. Alright, I got the Spire. Now somebody might need TP later, but nobody needs it now, so I'm going to spread it. So then you're kind of at the mercy the next draw because you have to use a card or you just let it fall. Which letting it fall is just a waste, in my opinion. So Spear and Arrow will double the duration of the next card. And then you have the Ewer and the Spire. They will give half the potency of the next card, but will give it to everybody that's nearby. Now, it says nearby targets. I'm not sure what the range is. It's probably about the same range as Expected Helios, which is 15 yards. So, I take the next card. Now I get the Spire again. If I don't want to use this, I shuffle. Now I used my Spear, and I got a double duration for Arrow. Which, I guess there's a mistake there, because I got 40 seconds instead of 30. So, if I wanted to, on myself, I can't use Time Dilation to give somebody a boost, but then I could use Celestial Opposition to give myself another 5 seconds. If I use the card I had, it replaces, it does not stack, so be careful when you're doing buffs. I haven't played with another Astrologian at the same time, but for my buff, it just erased it. Now if you had 2 Astrologians, maybe they'll stack, maybe they don't. I'll have to try and get some confirmations for that. What I really want to talk about was Ewer and Spire. Now, Ewer and Spire are good cards if people need them. If people don't need them, store them. They're probably your best card to store, mainly for the fact that once you store it, it will give half potency, which, yes, it's a loss, but if you're in a raid group, then you extend that half potency to 8 people. Now, if you were to do just the math, so if you're doing 0.5 times 8 people, if you manage to hit all 8 people, then you're still at a 4-card advantage, technically. You still have, well, 3-card advantage, because the first, you're still using 1 card on 1 person. That would use it regardless. And even if you're in a group, then you're still at 1 card ahead. Those are really good to use, as long as you can. And this is hard in pugs, because in pugs it's hard, it's like herding cats. People just scramble everywhere. If you're at least in TeamSpeak, or you're in your own group, you can call out, you know, after a big hit, stay here, you know, just give me a sec, I'll boost you guys. Something. Astrologian is really big on communication. If you're in a pug, in a dungeon, and you pull out that card, and you manage to get everybody, then what you can further do is scroll to whoever has the best DPS, and then you can use Time Dilation and Celestial Opposition if you have those skills unlocked. I highly recommend keep the Ewer for yourself when you're leveling. You will probably run out of mana from spamming a lot of Cure 2 especially if you're undergeared, just because that 380 just doesn't seem to keep people up. Good luck, have fun. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to be making a video about how I do my pulls and how I try to do certain things in groups. And sometimes I get screwed over because people don't like to wait. But yeah, it is a good class to play. Give it a shot. It's just understanding the class. If you're a tank and you understand what an astrologian has to go through, or a good astrologian will go through, then play the class. It's always good to learn the other classes. It's one of the biggest tips I have to make yourself a better player. Thanks for watching. Sorry I dragged it on for a lot longer than it should have. Don't forget to subscribe and just keep a lookout for my next video. I will be showing what I actually use in combat and how I pull.